paved the way for Hegel to be confirmed. So it seems that these Republicans at the end really didn't have the stomach to keep up the fight and just wanted to see it end. But probably the most surprising vote was Rand Paul, who has been a little bit of a maverick on this. He filibustered the vote. He wanted more information from the White House, and he in fact voted against cloture, but then later in the day voted to confirm Hegel, which raised just a lot of eyebrows of people.
Yeah, do we find out what his reasoning, did he give his reasoning about it, or did he not say?
He did give his reasoning, actually. Earlier today on Fox News, they asked him about it, and he said that his vote against cloture was a way for him to try to pry more information from the administration on a handful of issues, the Benghazi attacks, Hegel's financial records, several other things. And he said that when he voted in favor of Hegel later on in the day, that was to show deference to the president and the president's right to have the people he once confirmed to these positions. So they're really bizarre rationale, to be quite honest. If you're against somebody, you should be principled and stand by that, most would think. And if you're for somebody, you should vote for them. But his answer seems to have it both ways. Right.
Now, I'm sure John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and others are not happy about this. What is this going to say for his relationship with them?
Well, look, I don't think his relationship is good with them right now. He's going to have to work hard to repair this as he goes forward in the job. But I'll just note, people like Graham and McCain actually voted in favor of the cloture vote, even though they were huge critics of Hegel. They did vote ultimately to end the debate and bring this around to a final vote at the end of the day. So even though they did that, I think that they still have their problems with Hegel, and they'll probably be addressing them as Hegel goes forward, and the problems that he encounters as now the defense secretary.
Right. And when things going on like we have with China, I mean, Bill Gert's piece that you had in the Free Beacon, Washington Free Beacon, it just scares me with Hegel being that the Secretary of Defense. Now, what's some of the things that you had written about, looking about his positions on India, and how that you put out a story that came out a few hours ago, talking about that and what the Pentagon had to come out with?
Yeah, that's right. Well, on the eve of the confirmation, actually, I finally got a hold of one of Hegel's past speeches. There had been an issue about his failure to release and be completely transparent in giving the Senate materials, particularly speeches that he had delivered. This one was from 2011, and it came from Cameron University, where Hegel had delivered a speech, and we actually had to get that under the Open Records Act out there to get the tape. And once we did, we saw that Hegel had some controversial statements. He suggested that India, actually a U.S. ally in the war against terror, he suggested that India, in fact, has perhaps sponsored attacks against Pakistan in Afghanistan. Of course, they're on the border there, so it's very porous. And this comment really set off a firestorm. The government of India quickly responded to my story and condemned Hegel, said that his views were wrong-headed and contra to reality. And the story has continued. In India, it really dominated the media, actually, last night. They're asking for Hegel to apologize. And just earlier this evening, the Pentagon spokesperson actually got back to me to clarify Hegel's remarks. So what we're seeing is just this first day, and already the Pentagon has to do some damage control on Hegel.
Well, it's some really good reporting, Adam. We're talking with Adam Kredo, the senior writer for the Washington Free Beacon. Now, my question to you: you've done a lot of writing about Hegel. Is he more prone to just speak off the cuff and he gets himself in trouble, or what's his style going to be like? Do you see you've read his speeches and you've listened to some of it. I saw him in the testimony. I saw him all over the place when he was at the confirmation hearing. That was like, I felt like he was going to say that was the bad Hegel and I'm the good Hegel now, and I didn't know who was what. But what is he like?
It's interesting, and you make a good point. Hegel did appear flummoxed quite often in those hearings, which did not paint him in a positive way, and liberals and conservatives alike agreed on that point. But what we see in these speeches that Hegel's delivered is that he sounds like a professor, which he actually is. He's taught at Georgetown University, and his speeches are very academic and somewhat esoteric, but he seems to run into trouble during question and answer sessions when he's posed a question and asked to speak off the cuff, when he has to deviate from prepared remarks. That's where he seems to get into trouble, and that's where some of the complaints have arisen. The Free Beacon reported, according to observers of some of his past speeches that weren't released, that he had criticized Israel, that he had said that the State Department is an adjunct of the Israeli Foreign Ministry office. So controversial things such as that, and those occurred when he was speaking off the cuff. So if we see him in that environment, maybe responding to questions, we could have an episode like that again.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be definitely watching some of this, and I mean, looking at this, already right out of the gate here, and we're already thinking about apologies to countries like India, a very important country to us in the world, and right off the bat, it just seems like we're in for a rocky ride with this now confirmed Secretary of Defense.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, it could be quite a ride. We are already seeing evidence of that, but Hagel, of course, only just delivered today his opening remarks. To the Free Beacon's website actually has a very instructive collage of some of the highlights or lowlights, depending on how you view him. So I do urge everybody to take a look at that to see what he's saying to Pentagon people.
What do you think his style is going to be at the Pentagon? Has there been any? I mean, do we know enough about him? I mean, we know a lot about his past, but heading up an agency, is there any kind of insight that has out there how he's going to run the organization, run the Pentagon?
Well, look, it's a complicated job. It's a very difficult job, and former defense officials will tell you that, and former Pentagon chiefs will certainly tell you that. There are a lot of competing interests at the Pentagon, and a leader has to juggle them. And there have been questions raised in the past as to Hagel's management style, and people who have worked with him that I've spoken to have said that he is not an effective leader, that as a senator he didn't run his office well, that there was a lot of turnover, and that Hagel was known to have a bit of a temper. So that could play out in a troubling fashion if, in fact, it's true now that he's leading this huge organization.
Yeah, and with the cuts coming on Friday, Hagel given his position on what he thinks. I mean, between all the fog of questions of why he should have even been the defense secretary, what is his positions on that, on this question?
Well, look, he said today that he supports the military, that it's his highest priority. Those were his words, and that doesn't necessarily jibe with some of his past statements. He said multiple times in the past that the Pentagon should not be an outlet for job creation, that the Pentagon budget is bloated and needs to be cut. So his positions now and then don't necessarily go together, so it's going to be interesting to see how he actually accounts for these cuts and carries them out and helps to maybe stymie them if in fact he can. But he seems to support the president, who also has talked about cutting defense spending.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the issues that people are going to be looking at here, and then possibly what's going to happen a month from now, even more so even Friday, and it'll be interesting to see how Chuck Hagel reacts as the new Secretary of Defense. Well, Adam, I really appreciate you being on. Adam Kredo is a senior writer for the Washington Free Beacon, and you can reach Adam at Kredo0. That is right for your Twitter handle?
That is right for my Twitter handle.
All right. Well, Adam, I thank you for being on tonight.
I thank you for having me. Yeah. It's nice to chat with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We'll look forward to next time.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Yep.